Never Submit Entertainment proudly presents.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
The Never Submit Podcast.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
With your host, Matthew Chikala.
And what you gonna do when Hulkamania and the largest arms in the world destroy you?
Join Matthew and his special guests as they discuss the latest news and rumors in all forms of entertainment.
Are you ready?
Each week, they break down everything from movies and TV shows.
Check out the big brain on Brad. You're a smart motherfucker, that's right.
To professional wrestling and mixed martial arts.
If you're not down with that, we got 2 words for ya. Ooh, yeah.
It's the Never Submit Podcast.
Hasta la vista, baby.
And it's happening right now.
Game over.
Hey, welcome to another edition of our Never Submit Podcast. How's it going? This is your host today, Josh. Today we've got a really cool guest coming on the show today. His name is David Bianchi. He is a actor out of Los Angeles. I've known David for a couple of years now. He's been on many different things, from independent films to big Hollywood blockbusters. One that comes to mind is the movie Priest, which I believe is about demons and possessions and things of that nature. So we'll definitely go into that as well. But he's also acted in TV shows like Pretty Little Liars. He was an actor on America's Most Wanted. So he's done a handful of different things. So he's definitely got his feet wet. But now he's actually dove right into the world of writing and producing and put together his own little film that I know he's actually been working for a couple of years. And it's called Out Dysfunction. And it's a cool little film. I actually had an opportunity to see it, and it was cool. They were really interesting characters, really well written, and the delivery from the actors really well delivered. I mean, it was there were some scenes in there. I'm not going to go into spoilers here because I would love for you guys to take an opportunity to take advantage of this. The film will be available on demand in several different markets, but primarily iTunes on September 17th. Once again, David Bianchi is the writer and producer of this, and this film was directed. Get that director for you. That was directed by Ryan Lee Masters, and we'll definitely talk about his relationship with Ryan. See how Ryan came into the picture, how the casting took place on this. Budget as well. This is a independent film. I spoke with David yesterday and today about this production, and so this is definitely a independent film. Okay, so this is not something where Hollywood was able to dip their fingers into. They weren't able to assist. This is all of blood, sweat, and tears on David's end, probably Ryan as well, and a few others. And so. And now, once again, that goes into the casting, that goes into the writing, that goes into the direction, location hunting, everything that goes into independent filmmaking. That probably went into this film called Out Dysfunction. Once again, that will be available on iTunes September 17. And then I believe it's going to, shortly after that, it will follow other on-demand markets like Amazon and Google Play and what have you. So, it'll be a few moments. I'm going to bring David on the line with us, and we are going to dive right in. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Never Submit Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. So, as I mentioned before, just a few moments ago, I've got the man on the line, David Bianchi. He is joining with us right now. As I mentioned before, he's got a brand new movie out there that's coming up next month on the 17th, September 17th. That's going to be available on iTunes and then after other markets. It's called Out Dysfunction. It is definitely an incredible film. Definitely an incredible piece of work. David, man, how you doing?
What's up, man? I'm good. I'm living the dream one day at a time. Shout out to the audience. Thanks for having me on the show, and I appreciate you extending an olive branch to chat about the little baby movie that could.
Yeah, man. Yeah, the little baby that could, man. The little engine that could, man. And that's what our industry is all about, especially when you're a couple of indie guys like ourselves. You're climbing that mountain trying to make something happen, man. So I definitely got to say congratulations and kudos to you and your team, getting this movie done. So overall, man, how does it feel to have this under your belt?
that's the $1 million question, right? It's like, what is the biggest accomplishment in your career? How does it feel to have the movie completed? Well, an old director of mine. First off, kudos to director Ryan Lemasters, who's also one of the producers on the film, and kudos to Christina Jolie, who's also another producer on the film. And I couldn't have done it without those two partners. It's Exertia Films, my company, Cinematic Artistry, and Gravant Pictures. So 3 companies that came together to make this film. But in response to your question, man, it's like, one of my director buddies, he said to me, when it comes to making a film, because you're basically going, in my case, being a screenwriter and also the producer and one of the lead actors, I'm going from idea to pencil scratch all the way to screen, right? Mm-hmm. And every single stage of the film is a different battle. So, we like to say, hey, man, look, let's not start sucking each other's dicks yet. We still got a movie to make. Okay, hold on. Let's not start jerking off yet, man. We still got to get it through post. Okay, well, hold on, man. Please, don't finger my asshole yet. I still got to get it out to the world. Yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, it's like every single stage of producing a film has so many different obstacles and its own separate set of pitfalls. That how does it feel? Well, it feels great to be here right now, but it's going to feel incredible when it's in distribution. And then you'll ask me, how does it feel then? And I'm going to say, it's going to feel great when I can see what the metrics are. How do you feel when you see the metrics? Well, it's going to feel great when my investors get their money back. Or you never know. It's like, this thing is an ongoing battle, and is it my biggest accomplishment as a producer and as a filmmaker? Yeah, it is. But, I mean, this is just a small cobblestone in a long road of films to come until I get to that Oscar-winning film.
There you go, man. And it definitely, you know what? I had a conversation with an actor at Starbucks today, someone that's, kind of in the same, shoes as yourself and a few others. He said his goal is definitely to be nominated for an Academy Award. Is that a big goal of yours?
Well, I'm more interested in winning than being nominated.
Sure.
But look, man. At the end of the day, yeah, I say it. I said it publicly, and I can say it again. I will win an Oscar at some point before I die. It may take me 30 years, and that's fine. It may take me 10 years. I don't know. But you got to throw me out of Los Angeles kicking and screaming. I didn't come to Los Angeles to fail. I didn't come to Los Angeles as an actor to try this thing. I mentor a lot of up and coming actors and offer consolations to a lot of up-and-coming actors, and I tell them, if you came to try it, go back to Michigan where the rent's cheap. Get a girlfriend, get a dog, get a house, get a backyard. Because if that's what you came here to do, just leave now, because it's over. I can't be involved in a relationship with a woman, look at her dead in the eye and say, you know what, I'm really going to try to love you.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Either you're in or you're out.
You have to position yourself, and you have to ground your footing in a way that indicates a guaranteed posture of success. You have to walk in a room, carry yourself with a posture of success. You have to constantly have success in your mouth. You have to have the end result constantly in the state of your periphery. Otherwise, what are you doing? Help me understand what you're doing. Go back to Chicago. Go back to Illinois. Go back to Iowa, where they're not going to judge you so much. So is that my ultimate goal, to win an Oscar? Well, yeah, yes, I will. I say that. I say that I will win an Oscar someday, and I'm fighting for that goal. But I'm more interested in doing good work. Because I think that legacy is what you leave behind. And all we can do as artists is leave behind work. And hopefully that work is good work. I don't fight for money in this business. I fight for good work. Stella Adler said something really great. Stella Adler said, focus on the work, right? So I want to focus on the work because in my business, good work is synonymous with fame, which is synonymous with wealth. So if I fight for the work, then I will never be a substitute for substance. Whereas you find a lot of people in Hollywood that are substitutes for substance, reality stars, pop-off actors, that are fighting for this thing for the wrong reason.
No, absolutely, man. I definitely. It makes perfect sense. I couldn't have said it any better myself. Two things definitely come to mind when you were just talking. Well, number one, there's a quote from James Cameron where he said, you know, you can either, you know, follow your heart or you can follow the money dragon. If you follow the money dragon, you won't get anywhere. You follow your heart, you follow your passion, you'll get something. And, you know, it could be a big blockbuster, it could be an Academy Award nominee, or in David's case, a win, right? You could definitely get something, right? But you got to follow. You got to put the blood and the sweat and the tears into the product. And sometimes the product is you as a person, as an actor, as a filmmaker, as a writer, whatever the case might be. So I definitely agree with you, man. Kudos to that.
Yeah, and look, and that's a great way to it's a great analogy to bring up what Cameron said about chasing the money dragon. Because listen, man, it's not money that's going to keep your team fighting in the trenches with you. Because, you know, film, any measure of film is a collaborative effort, and nothing is done alone. Nobody is an island, right? So if I'm working with the money dragon and I'm throwing money around to get my team to work for me, as soon as the money's gone, I don't have a team, right? It's sort of like, hey, I got all these hot girls, but as soon as the coke's gone, they're gone, right? So now, if I'm coming from a place of absolute diaphragm deep inspiration, a cause for an artistic measured goal where you can feel the fire and see it in my eyes, that's when people will follow you and they will work with you and they will stay with you with or without money. Because that speaks to your heart, that speaks to your truth, that speaks to artistic integrity. People will follow integrity way before they'll follow the dollar.
Right.
And that's how so many great artists are created. Because they come from a place of artistic integrity. You know, and people that work around you know that you will finish what you say, what you set your heart to. They know you're going to finish, so they're going to follow you. And they believe in your aesthetic because you present yourself in such a fashion. You don't put out bad work. Even if it's a $5 short film, you can make a short film for $5. Shoot something on your iPhone. But make sure it's fucking good. Otherwise, don't show it to the world. You know? I respect the guy with a 2-minute short film that was done on an iPhone. If it's good, I'm like, dude, that's great. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Yeah, put your heart into it.
You show me a short film that's shit. I don't want to see what you're going to do next because you don't take your craft seriously enough where you're going to take bad work and present it in the public space.
No, absolutely, man. I definitely agree. And that's all about putting the, you know, as you mentioned, having integrity. Put some integrity into it. Put some heart into it. Once again, I couldn't agree more. And just going back to the Oscar thing really quickly, I was just going to mention that there's a lot of people who have been chasing the Oscars and been nominated a couple of times. Like I was watching a thing on YouTube about Robin Williams. Of course, God bless his soul. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he was nominated a handful of times before he got that big win with Good Will Hunting. So no matter how big you get, there's always that chase. That chase will always be there, you know. So you just keep at it. You keep going. So I definitely agree with you there, man. But you mentioned before. Go ahead.
And the question you have to ask yourself is like, okay, how much is enough? You know, when are we happy with what we've done and what we've created? As you see these great artists, and you talk about Robin Williams and James Cameron, and talk about Clint Eastwood, and some of these guys, a great television director, Ed Bianchi, some of these guys are in their 70s, man.
Yeah.
I just saw Paul Simon at the Hollywood Bowl. The guy is 72, I think. Killing it.
Yeah.
That right there, I mean, when is there enough? There's never enough. We're artists. This is what we do for life. We don't know how to stop. That's the stuff that real artists are made of.
Well, what's remarkable? You mentioned Paul Simon. What's remarkable about that is most artists that keep at it live the longest too. I had a meeting with Jack Nicholson's manager like maybe a year or two ago. It was a phone meeting, and when you look up, some of these actors, it's like you look at their age, like, yeah, they're either close to 70 or they are 70 or in their 70s, but they're still at it and they're still kicking ass on screen. That you mentioned Paul Simon, he's still kicking ass on the stage, and it's like, or like think of any of your favorite legendary bands, like the Rolling Stones. Personally, for myself, whenever music comes up, I always mention Van Halen. Van Halen is still kicking ass, whenever they're on stage, and yeah, they're up there in age. So it's like, as long as you're doing your thing and you're passionate about it and you love doing it, yeah, man, it's almost like it doesn't kill you. You keep going. But no,
absolutely right. There's a Buddhist proverb that says what is genuinely the root of happiness. Because you talk about these artists that you mentioned, the Rolling Stones, Aerosmith, Steven Tyler, some of these guys that are still rocking.
mm-hmm.
There's two things that you need in your life to be happy. Two things. You need something to love and something to do. And in some cases, that thing that you do might be the thing that you love. Now, you don't necessarily have to have a person to love. You could have a pet, a familiar. You could have something. But you need a reason to get out of bed, a reason to stay perpetually in your purpose. And these guys, they keep going because they are constantly in their purpose. The guys that work at the blue-collar, factories or do the 9-to-5 or work in the white-collar world, yeah, they retire and they got to figure out something else to do because maybe they never really loved what they did to begin with. I love what I do. As much as it defeats me, as much as it punches me in the kidneys, you know what I mean? Puts me in an arm bar, gives me the finger fish hook and gags me out. Sometimes I spend a lot of time with my head in my hands questioning the decisions that I made for my life. But inevitably, I love what I do because I love the process.
Mm-hmm.
I see the end result, and I love the process. I heard this today at a panel I was at. An executive for Disney said something great. He says, look, if you're going to be in this business, you have to be sure that you love the process.
Yeah.
You as an entertainment personality and myself as an actor, it's like I can honestly say that if I had to make a straight guess, I'd probably spend out of 100% of my time as an actor, I maybe spend 10% of that time in front of a camera. The rest of that time is going about my day-to-day affairs, developing business with casting directors, with producers, with directors, sending emails, sending text messages, focusing on my social media, dealing with the media aspects of who I am as an entertainment personality, connecting with managers, agents, so on and so forth. All the administrative and logistical things that come with being an actor, let alone being in classes, photo shoots, headshots, press interviews, podcasts. You have to love that process. Because it's not really about acting. It's about the process to be able to act.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. So you can definitely do your thing and definitely love it. So, no, I definitely agree with you again. Earlier, you mentioned other places, growing up or moving back places. David, where are you originally from?
I was born, from Brazil, from Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Oh, okay.
And then raised Rochester, New York. And my mother is African, Brazilian, Indian mixed, and then my father is Italian and Polish mixed. So here I am. But raised a bit in upstate New York, Mexico City.
Okay.
A little bit in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and then back to New York, and then Arizona State University was my theater and film degree, and then now 12 years in Los Angeles. So that's the roundabout version. Okay,
gotcha. Yeah, you're kind of like me. So overall, you're a mix of a lot of different things. So that's pretty much very common with a lot of people. All right. So now you mentioned were you raised in New York? Because you mentioned Brazil, but then were you primarily raised in New York?
I was primarily raised mostly in upstate New York, up in good old Rochester, New York, and that was cool. That was cool. I mean, my first experience with being an actor was in Rochester.
Mm-hmm.
I remember vividly the kids in the neighborhood, in second grade. So it's a while ago. We would. This is when like TV commercials were kind of like the shit.
Right.
In the 80s. So. It was like Life commercials and Johnson & Johnson commercials or whatever, but we would sit on the swing set, and then a couple of us would act out TV commercials for the kids sitting on a swing set. So we would play audience for each other, and we would just sort of like be kids, and we would pretend we were climbing up clouds and, and whatever we were doing. But what I find it unique about that is that I was doing improv way before I even knew what improv was.
Sure.
My first time on stage, I played Peter Pan and Captain Hook and Peter Pan in third grade in Mexico City. And then I always found myself somehow involved in theater, going through elementary school, middle school, and also high school.
Sure.
And didn't decide to really do this professionally until 2001 when I was a rave promoter in upstate New York and doing a lot of fun stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to reinvent myself. So I decided to go to theater school, and I've been in Los Angeles since 2003, 2004, 2000.
Okay.
2004.
Oh, awesome. So you mentioned you went to school in Arizona, but now, and definitely, forgive me if my geography is a little off here on distance and stuff like that.
Sure.
Were you kind of close to, say, Manhattan, where you were living in New York? And the reason I'm asking that is because there was a lot of stuff in Manhattan for acting. Of course, Broadway.
Not at all.
Okay.
I was really far away from Manhattan.
Gotcha.
Rochester is like a 6-hour drive to Manhattan.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
Almost a 7-hour drive. So, yeah, nowhere near Manhattan. I unfortunately haven't had the opportunity to do any work in the city.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of drugs in the city. I did a lot of partying in the city.
Sure.
I had a lot of sex in the city. But I didn't do, any performance in the city. Okay. But I will eventually. I've always said that I am a theater baby. I do have some pretty deep theater experience. Especially with what I did at Arizona State. So I've always said that I will perform on Broadway. I'd love to go back to the theater and perform on Broadway at some point in my career, for sure.
Right on. And every time I hear, New York and acting, and New York, of course, not just Manhattan, but SNL, Saturday Night Live is there and stuff like that. So I was just curious to see if that was ever, something on your radar. But you mentioned it kind of is, maybe for the future, something later on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would absolutely love to have the opportunity to go back and do some really, really interesting theater. Unfortunately, theater doesn't pay.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and I came to part of my migration west to Arizona State was I was able to work out in-state tuition rates, but they also had a nationally ranked theater program. Mm-hmm. So I was able to do that, but I wanted to bridge the gap to Los Angeles because I knew that ultimately film and television was what I wanted. Truly a film and television city. And I could certainly see myself, getting to a point in my career where, okay, I've made enough money in film and TV. Now let me step back and go to New York and do some really interesting theater because I have money. Now, we talked about how money doesn't bring happiness, but money does bring options to be able to plant seeds to sow a harvest to further happiness, hence having some comfort to be able to do some theater.
Right, and I'm
excited about that.
Yeah, and absolutely. And, the thing is, it's not always about money, but here's the deal. It's like when you do things that you're passionate about, that you love, the money will follow. You don't chase the money dragon, but the money will follow you at some point because you're doing what you love, and then people will pay to see you in some fashion. So, yeah, definitely nothing wrong with that.
Success is going to find you.
Exactly.
Think about it. How many times have you or anybody in the audience that's listening gone to an event and you don't know anybody? You look around, right? And you see a couple people, maybe you're people watching. You notice a couple people that just in your mind look successful. Like, God, that guy looks successful. That girl, wow, she looks like she's got her shit together. That girl looks successful. You can see success. Now, whether they have money in the bank or not, is neither here nor there. But you can see success. Success will follow you. As long as you know in your heart that you are already successful and that your perception of success is exactly where your feet are and not using other people's barometer to dictate what your success is supposed to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's I think part of the problem with a lot of people in Hollywood is that they are so concerned with other people's perception of what they think they're supposed to be that through the process of thinking what people think you're supposed to be, you lose your self-identity and you can't stand in your own 2 feet because you're too concerned with other people's points of view.
No, exactly, man.
When you're so overly concerned with other people's points of view, then you tend to lose this thing called self. And when you lose your sense of self, then you completely diminish your ability to be successful.
Absolutely. Don't forget to be your own. You be your own man. Be your own person. Absolutely, man. Okay, so we kind of got, a little bit of the history where the acting bug bit you. Was there any kind of inspirations as a young kid? Anybody you looked up to?
I've been asked this question before, and I can honestly say that I don't really remember any specific. Some actors have like that wow moment, like that, like, God, I saw Brando and I knew, or or
right.
I saw DiCaprio and I knew, I didn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
I was just always I was just a really high energy kid. I was always the class clown. I got expelled from 5 high schools. I never graduated from high school. I got a GED and ended up graduating magna cum laude from Arizona State. Go figure. I was just always a really rambunctious and really, really chaotic sort of kid. And I think that whatever that DNA is, whatever that wiring is sort of what fed my desire or my need to perform.
Right.
Because sometimes I ask myself, did I choose this business or did this business choose me?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think it's the other way around. I couldn't see myself doing anything.
No, actually, it could definitely go both ways, and especially you've been at it, for so long, and definitely you're definitely up there, up that ladder. So it's definitely easy to see that maybe this business did choose you, with that. And then sometimes with that, the inspiration question, for some people it could be that one person, like me, I could very easily say it was Spielberg films when I was a very young kid, or Star Wars, things of that nature. But for some people, like yourself, you were very hyper, like you said, you were doing the commercials at the park for your friends and stuff like that, and they laughed and they were entertained. That could be part of it. You could have just, maybe you found a knack at a very early age and you took it seriously, later in life when you went to college. There's definitely many different answers to that question, So I think that's cool. I think.
Yeah, there's certainly films that I remember growing up. At one point, I think I wanted to be an anthropologist because Indiana Jones got my wheels spinning,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Unbeknownst to how boring that job actually really is. Star Wars. And those big iconic films, yeah, certainly. I loved watching TV, Poltergeist. I love those great films.
Sure.
But, you have to I also realize from a ethnic perspective, I was born in 77. I don't lie about my age. So I was watching television in the early mid-'80s. This is before HBO, when I was sort of in my formative years, per se. And when I watched the television, there weren't a lot of people that looked like me that were doing things in major television and motion picture. Most of the people that I watched were white faces.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really have a lot of people that I could grab onto that were like, oh, I could do that. Bill Cosby was doing his thing. Eddie Murphy was kind of doing his thing. But Eddie Murphy I wasn't able to watch his stuff when I was growing up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I think that Bill Cosby was, Different Strokes was a show, Todd Bridges was sort of doing his thing, but there weren't a lot of people that I can look to and be like, oh, that guy looks like America. I just wanted to do it. I just wanted to act.
Yeah. You just want to perform.
Yeah, I just love to perform. I just love to do it. I love to dance. I ended up when I got back to New York, I got involved in the freestyle scene, which is like late 80s, like 89, 90, basically the golden era of hip hop. So doing a lot of freestyling and battle rapping and break dance, and it became a b-boy, and that sort of led into me becoming a rave promoter. And so I was always I was that cat that was in a b-boy crew. We would go to parties, we'd be breaking out in circles, doing windmills, crab walks, all that kind of stuff. So I was always performing in some way, shape, or form.
Right on, man. Right on. Well, no, that's really cool. And then this next question kind of goes with the previous one. But if this might mold together. But were there any directors that you liked younger or even today? Do you have any movie directors that you kind of inspire to work with?
I will say this. I could talk about recent directors, basically kind of 2000, 2001 and on.
Mm-hmm.
There's one thing that I have found is that whatever discipline you're involved in, you have to do it well and focus in and have blinders onto anything else. Not to say that you should be cultured to be aware of your surroundings and the things going on around you, but you should really try to be a student of what you're doing. And
sure.
When I was a rave promoter, that was my world. So I didn't know anything about, the early Jim Jarmusch films, and I didn't know anything about, the Cassavetes films until I went to film school. But directors that I absolutely love and admire, Stanley Kubrick, Quentin Tarantino to me is a human god.
Sure.
Cinematically, although I don't think every movie that he's made has been my favorite, but he's certainly one of my all-time idols. Tony Scott, God bless his soul. Anything that comes out of Ridley Scott is usually pretty dope. Michael Mann is always doing some really, really cool, interesting things. Iñárritu is just extraordinary. I mean, I was following Iñárritu when he did Amores Perros. When I saw Amores Perros, I was blown away. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck did I just watch? That's just an incredible way to interweave a story. I tend to like dark, human condition stories. You know, I love Paul Thomas Anderson. I look to those guys to give me sort of examples on how to tell stories.
Sure. Yeah, and you mentioned
Darren Aronofsky. Can't forget him.
Oh God, the Wrestler is definitely one of my favorite films of all time. Definitely a good movie by him.
Great movie.
Yeah, definitely.
Great movie.
I mean, he pretty much resurrected Mickey Rourke, and it kind of like what you mentioned with Tarantino. He resurrected John Travolta in the '90s with Pulp Fiction. You know, and I mean, when Pulp Fiction came out, that was a movie that there was nothing else like it at that time frame. And even today, when he comes out with, he came out with The Hateful Eight, but also like, Glorious Bastards. I mean, his filmmaking is definitely very unique. It's definitely different. So when you have a Tarantino film out there, you definitely are going to get something special.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. And all these directors that I mentioned, to be, with all fairness, outside of maybe Tony and Ridley, none of those guys are overtly commercial directors.
Right.
You know, none of those guys are doing major tentpole studio pictures. Well, Michael Mann, of course, certainly is, and Ridley and anything out of the Scott Free guys. But most of those guys that I mentioned are just storytellers.
Mm-hmm. No, actually, Tarantino, he's a guy. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say Tarantino's a straight up independent. He works closely with the Weinsteins. The Weinsteins, in a way, you can almost say, I mean, they're very, very, very successful, but in a way, their format is very independent. Their style.
Yeah, I mean, I don't buy that a Weinstein picture is an independent film anymore. I don't buy into that because they are a mini major. So
sure.
If you're a mini major, you're still a studio. So I mean, that's by definition. Independent film is anything that's funded outside of the studio system. But yeah, Quentin does have a very independent spirit about how he tells stories.
Mm.
And I like the fact that he sticks to his guns. Those are the filmmakers that really have something really, really unique to say, and they're not going to second guess their artistic integrity, and they're not going to make sacrifices about what they want to do. Quentin says, he's like, dude, I'm shooting on film. He's like, if I can't shoot on film anymore, I'm not making movies ever again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
awesome.
No, it's definitely a great thing. Yeah, he's definitely like you said, he's sticking to his guns.
Yeah.
No, great, man.
Yeah,
but yeah, let's dive into the main event. The main reason why you're here. So, David, you have a brand new movie out there. It's called All Out Dysfunction. And as I mentioned earlier in my introduction into this particular episode, I had an awesome chance to see a screener of this, and I definitely got to say it's an awesome film. It's an awesome piece of work, and it really well written. I got to give kudos to your cast, including yourself. Really well delivered. And there's I'm not gonna do any spoilers out there because I definitely want our audience to have the enjoyment of checking it out. But there are some moments in there that are very serious, right? And but the performances, your entire cast, delivered were just like right off the chain. And there was a lot of stuff, when I was roommating in Los Angeles, I would say between like places like San Pedro and the Valley and all that jazz. I did some house parties. Like you kind of talked about partying earlier. Did some partyings in the Valley as well as Studio City and Hollywood and Sunset. Dude, man, your movie brought back some memories. That being said, the content in the movie, was that a big inspiration to the film when you were writing it?
Yeah, I mean, and thanks for that really kind commentary on the movie, man. I really appreciate that, and I get the sense that you're being genuine. You're not blowing smoke at my ass. the initial conception of the film was like, me having been a producer and predominantly making short films, because my goal here was to produce things that I can act in, because I felt that Hollywood wasn't affording me enough opportunities as an actor.
Right.
So, I just said, look, a friend of mine who moved here from film school, where I went to film school with, he calls me up one day. He's like, dude, yo, I'm staying at this place called the Fucked Up Mansion, man, up in Granada Hills. I'm like, what the Fucked Up Mansion? What the fuck is that? He said, no, you gotta come check it out. So I go to Granada Hills, and sure enough, it's a fucked up mansion. It's like literally this 16,000 square foot compound that was like built in like the 80s. There's paint peeling off the walls. There's been like no upkeep since it was erected. And the guy that owns the joint is literally renting rooms out to people that are in various transient points in their life. And I'm walking through this place, and it turns out the guy that owns it is a filmmaker. And I was like, I gotta make a fucking movie here. I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I gotta make a movie here. And that was the inception for the movie. Okay. And so from there, it was like I knew I had the house at least available to me, because I came up with this sort of idea of like a bunch of crazy motherfuckers living here and shit just going ham, Yeah. Because I'm always interested in the dark and the zany. I love seeing actors deliver performances when they're induced on drugs or some sort of mood-altering substance, because drugs really push the limits of the human condition.
Sure.
And I love seeing that portrayed in film. So I was like, look, I knew what I wanted to do. So I pitched to the guy that owned the house. He's like, okay, sure, whatever. He's like, he's probably heard it a million times. I'm like, all right, so I'm going to write a script. So, what started out as just character descriptions in my BlackBerry at the time, boom. 7.5 years later, here we are. I wrote the first draft of the script over 7 years ago.
That's how it starts, man. That's how it starts.
Yeah, that's how it starts. It's just a light bulb in the attic. And I impress upon anybody that's out there, like, take this opportunity to take that sticky note that's been sticking to your monitor for 4 months, that's got that one idea you came up with, after that one night stand, and turn it into a short film, turn it into a treatment, turn it into a screenplay, because that's really how it works.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the other caveat to that was that I've been experienced enough as a producer, and I had also produced 2 feature films at this point, 2 small features, and also a bunch of short films. So I knew that I needed to write for what I had, right? Mm-hmm. I knew that Ryan LeMasters, who directed, is a dear friend of mine, and he had some toys, and he was inspired, and he was motivated. So, I was like, look, I want to write a script that's pretty contained, that can take place in this house. So we basically get to walk away every day after production, and I can something that potentially hire my friends in. That was initially the impetus, writing for what I had. And, after the script probably went through about 12 rewrites over the years.
Yeah, which is nothing new in the industry. Tends to happen.
Whether it's the industry or it's the art form, I think it's more focused on the art form, because the art of writing is in revision.
Sure.
It's sort of like when you're, as an actor, when you're putting a scene into your muscle memory, like the art of finding the beats and the idiosyncrasies and innuendos in a emotional scene are in revision, in the repetition, and finding little delicate things, and that's the same thing with writing. So whether it's the industry, I think it really is more the art form of narrowing it down, because if it's not on the page, it's not on the stage.
No, absolutely. And the reason, and also too, it's collaborating with your director, Ryan, who we'll dive into in just a few moments. I want to share a really quick story with you, just to show that this was kind of like bringing back some old memories. Because like when I was younger, when I first moved to LA, the first time I moved to Los Angeles, like I took trips to LA, but the first time I actually officially packed my shit and left, right, the Midwest for LA, was 2007. And I was still like probably not as mature as I am now, and I was still in a real party mood, right? And so I would go to these parties in Studio City, as I mentioned, and Sunset, whatever. And I don't know if I was really deprived when I was at a young age, but the first time I saw real hardcore drugs was Los Angeles. And that was like cocaine and shit like that. And I woke up one time in the middle of the night after losing a couple of games of beer bong, because I suck at beer bong. And I woke up, and yeah, man, there was a row of dudes, credit card, game, case, and yeah, they were just doing coke. So that was the first time I ever seen it, cocaine. But that wasn't the last, of course, And so yeah, that's what I was saying before. It definitely rang some bells, man. When I saw some of those scenes, it was like, wow, I saw that.
Well, I write about what I know.
Sure.
And every character in that script is either someone that I've met, a piece of myself, truth is stranger than fiction. And I believe that. Certain things you just can't fucking make up. You got to see them and then recreate them in a script. And, everything that you saw in that script, that you saw in that film, the cocaine, ecstasy, masturbation, porn shoots, nitrous tanks, rave parties, date rape, all this shit that goes on in this chaotic movie. Mind you, audience, it is a dark comedy that ends in tragedy. These are all things that I've personally come in contact with. So, I knew how to write these things, and I knew how to make the dialogue for each character specifically genuine to that person's walk and talk of life. Because that's one of the things that Quentin Tarantino takes so much pride in, is his dialogue, and I take a lot of pride in my dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Every single character in Dysfunction has a very unique voice that's distinctly rooted in who they are. There's one thing I really focused on, is even the cadence of how they speak, or the slang that they'll use, the vernacular that they'll use, what is their lexicon, how do they, I really had to investigate that, because I wanted every character to be completely different from the next.
Sure.
Because Out Dysfunction is the ensemble comedy gone pear-shaped. Every ensemble piece that you see out there is like birds of a feather. It's the cross-country driving movie, it's the road trip movie, it's the, going in the woods summertime movie. Everybody looks the same. Whereas Dysfunction, you've got a bunch of motherfuckers that live together that would never even have lunch together, let alone live together, but they're forced to live together because of the constraints of LA.
Right.
Like you said. You used to live with people that you didn't know. Because artists come out here, for people that don't live in Los Angeles, artists come out here pursuing their dreams, but, they're waiters, they're bartenders, they're cocktail waitresses, they're working menial jobs, not making a lot of money, and they can't afford $1,000 a month in rent. So you're forced to rent a room in a house and live with people that you don't know and don't care about.
Mm-hmm.
And then through that same process, everybody's desperate. Because everybody's desperate to get out of where they're living and get to the next level of the entertainment game so they can pursue their dreams. So what do they do in the process? They're arrogant, they're self-centered, they're narcissistic, and they step on people along the way. And that's what happens in Dysfunction. It's a bunch of people just going nuts.
It's going nuts, man. It definitely happens in the film. But as mentioned, no. And I want to share that story because it really did bring back some old memories and stuff like that. But no, it was definitely well shot on that, and definitely well acted in those type of scenarios. Let's talk about your director, Ryan.
Yeah, what characters stood out to you? Who was your favorite character? Who was your least liked character?
My least liked character. As I mentioned, I don't want to put too many spoilers out there. But it was the. Can I mention a scene?
Of course, yeah. Of course.
Okay. There was one scene that was a little unsettling, and it was pretty much kind of like a drugged rape scene. And that the dude that was doing that was probably a little unsettling, but that happens. That definitely happens. The character I liked.
Wait, let's see. It's Friday right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's 7:25 Pacific time. I hate to say it. That's happening somewhere right now as we speak.
Absolutely. But as I mentioned, it's because the performances were done so well that brought up the unsettling. I mean, it could have looked really silly at the same time, but it wasn't. Your actors were really that good. Your performances, kudos to you with your writing and your director and stuff like that. It came out really good. Characters that I liked. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Please go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know the actor's name, but he was the independent filmmaker. He had the big bushy beard, and I liked him a lot.
Yeah. Joyce, yeah.
Yeah, he was funny. I really liked his character, and I liked your Indian roommate as well. I thought he was hilarious. I liked the little thing in the opening with the little cyber dates and the dad. I thought that was funny.
And so the audience knows what we're talking about. So in All Out Dysfunction, you've got 6 dysfunctional Hollywood types that all live in this match, and the only thing that ties them together is they all have rose to rent on Craigslist, right?
Right.
And so you've got this runway blonde cokehead model bulimic chick. You've got a 20-something Indian Punjabi who just graduated from MIT, who's a total transplant trapped in Indian culture. You've got a independent filmmaker who's also a gore effects makeup artist, who's kind of steampunk. You've got, Jen Pinto's character, Pleasure, who's like this, sort of like Puerto Rican black New York webcam porn chick.
Yeah.
And then you got my character, who's a germaphobe actor.
Yeah.
And then you've got the landlady, and she's a 70-year-old washed-up actress who's now a telemarketer by day.
Yeah, yeah.
Put that shit in your pipe and smoke it.
That was a hell of a mix, man. But it kind of worked. The germaphobe. I didn't even think of that. But when you come on screen and when you went through a little rant about your stuff and you put on these gloves, right away this is how I think sometimes though. I thought of Danny Tanner from Full House. Whenever I see someone that's a germaphobe or a clean nut, I always think of Danny Tanner. I'm like, oh, this guy likes places clean. He likes things to be spick and span. And when you picked up the sponge, you went through a whole spiel about the sponge. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, man. And it's a fun movie, man, and it's a dark cult comedy.
Yeah.
I really believe that we have the potential to be, a bit of a cult classic. I think that this movie is gonna, find a lot of legs in its word of mouth. Great guys like you that are gonna talk about it. Say, dude, I saw this crazy fucking little flick called All Out Dysfunction. Sort of like what happened with Napoleon Dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
Movies that just over time have legs.
And it definitely Napoleon Dynamite. I even think of like Breakfast Club back in the 80s, where it was just like, it's just one of those movies that kind of lives on, that people will pass on to generation. So no, I definitely agree. I can definitely see you doing that.
I love that analogy, and you're not the first person to say that to me. So that's really, really nice.
Yeah. So you might be onto something with this film, with that type of analogy. If that's not the first time you heard it, you're probably onto something. But yeah, I want to dive into your director, Ryan LeMasters. Now, did you know Ryan for a while, or was he like, did he try out for this, or was this like a meeting? How did this come about?
Ryan? No, I wrote the script knowing that I wanted to tap Ryan to direct.
Okay.
Ryan has been a long time collaborator of mine. Now we're going on almost 10 years together.
Sure.
We met on a documentary that I directed that he edited, and then I went on to produce his first two short films that I also wrote and also played leads in. And we garnered some pretty good success. And so we really developed not only a very, very close friendship, also a really strong creative collaboration. And I always knew, I was like, look, this is something for Ryan to do, because me and Ryan like really dark shit.
Sure.
And I knew that the darker I got, the more and more he would like it. So I knew that I had no limits. You know what I mean? I couldn't really hold me back.
Yeah.
So I brought it to Ryan, almost 7 years ago. And he liked the idea. The script was really rough. We went through some changes. I did a couple of rewrites. We decided to go ahead and, do a crowdfund for it. So, we did an Indiegogo campaign about 4 or 5 years ago. Raised about $15,000. Had some promissories from some investors. Money fell in, money fell out. The movie never happened. And then, 3 years later, we got the movie off the ground.
Right on. And then, well, I guess you kind of dove in. I was going to dive into the budget of things. So you mentioned Indiegogo. So did you do just one site for Indiegogo, or did you try multiple crowdfundings?
No, we did one Indiegogo, and for me as a producer and sort of like, kind of creative engine behind this thing, along with Ryan and Christina Jolie, was that, we got the $15 grand in the bank, and then, we had some key investors that said, we're not going to do this anymore. So what ended up happening was really fucking uncomfortable. I went through about 2.5 years of some major Indiegogo people saying, hey man, can I have my money back? Like, it was really fucking uncomfortable. Like, I took their money saying I'm going to make a movie, and here I am 2 years later, and I got no movie to show.
Right.
So it's really fucking brutal. So we ended up having to give some money back and blah, blah, blah. We ended up finally deciding, I broke the camel's back. I kind of cornered Ryan. I said, bro, we got to make this movie. We took people's money. We have to make this movie. Come hook or crook.
Right. Yeah.
Or high water, we got to do this. So we really dived in. He says, okay, Dave. He's like, look, I'll do it, but you've got to rewrite the script with me, and I want to go through it. I want to go through the whole script with you, line by line, word by word. And we did exactly that for a year. Literally, in close quarters together, word by word, line by line, went through the script so that he understood every single nuance of every single character and really understood them inside and out. Because one of the things that Ryan was really specific about was that, David, I've never done drugs in my life. Now, Ryan, by trade, is a gaffer. He's worked a lot of concerts. He's worked a lot of EDM concerts. So he's seen the rave scene. He knows that well.
Sure.
He's like, but I don't understand this world the way that you do. He's like, you have to help me get into this world. So that was one of the things that we had to do is we work really closely on making sure the characters are fleshed out. And my initial draft of the script had 9 characters living in the house. And I ended up cutting 3 characters out. Ryan made a good point in the rewrites. He's like, you've got 9 characters. He's like, but I don't have enough time in the screenplay to fall in love with any of them. We got to cut 3 out and then dedicate that time to 6 so that we can give the audience enough time to connect with these people, to give them a reason to love them or hate them.
Right.
And that was a good lesson that Ryan brought to the screenplay that really made me get super creative and get my ducks in a row, as a screenwriter.
No, that sounds all right. Sounds like Ryan, he definitely knows his stuff when it comes to storytelling and characters, because that is very important, because you want your audience to care about the characters. And I think that was definitely well delivered in the film with Ryan. So pretty much what you just said, would you say in a weird way you were kind of like a co-director? I mean, obviously you're the writer of the project, but would you say you're kind of like a co-director with Ryan too, to help him tap into that world?
I can't take that title. Ryan did an incredible job directing this film. We were under an exuberant amount of pressure.
Right.
That's why we worked so hard with our actors. We were very forthright with our actors about what they were getting into. That's how we got the performances that we got. Ryan did an incredible job directing this film, so I can't take any credit for that. But one of the things that I had to do was I did have to work with him incredibly closely in terms of not just the screenplay, but also the aesthetical energy of the film. If you look at the script and you watch how the movie plays, the first act is very white and very stark. The second act, when the porn scene starts, spoiler, we get a little more color and a little more energy. The camera gets a little more kinetic. And then the last act of the film is just a sonic and visual and kaleidoscope explosion. So the film builds visually and sonically the same way that the story builds in its masculine story structure. But every single frame of this movie, all the way down to the wardrobe, the art direction, the production design, everything has my fingerprints on it because I know the world so well. So for me, it was a great opportunity to really, really, really be hyper creative and sort of give my team as much information as I could muster out of myself with sketches and visual representations and, gallery representations so that they can go ahead and do their creativity, and then we can really tighten and tweak the screws. For a guy like you that's partied, those universes that we created in the house, specifically in the party sequences, are pretty fucking honest. Right.
It is. I could definitely vouch for that for what I saw. And yeah, I would definitely say that third act, because you mentioned the act breaks, right? And the third act definitely kind of gave me that fear and loathing Las Vegas type of feel, or even like Oliver Stone's The Doors, whenever they were tripping on drugs and stuff like that too. Just because that's once again that's a huge compliment to Ryan for the style he shot it, because he really gave you that feeling that you were stoned. Especially when I guess she was the landlord and she was tripping and she thought she won an Oscar. She was holding this piper or this stick thing, and it was and then when she passed out, this past lover shows up. Just really unique scenes, but it's definitely stuff that happens. And like you said, yeah, it's Friday night, and so a lot of this stuff is taking place right now. So it's definitely stuff that you can relate to and all that.
Absolutely, man. I mean, and so the audience knows the last 30 minutes of this movie is a rave. It's an impromptu rave party that gets thrown in this house because the lead character, Carrie, she conspires with the promoter to basically throw a rave at this house, but there's no way that they can do it with the landlady, Clarelle, the 7-year-old woman, knowing about it. So they have to conspire against the landlady, and I'm not going to spoil how they do that, but they basically got to get rid of the landlady so they can throw this rave. So the last 30 minutes is chaos, and everybody ends up, going in with their own intentions of things that they're going to get out of this party, but they ultimately end up getting a lot more than they can chew.
Right, absolutely. Now, you mentioned, David, that you were dealing with some investors besides Amigo Co, and then money fell out, which is, once again, it's no stranger to whether it's art, the industry, whatever the case might be. I've been there, more than one time where you thought you had some money for a production, and it just goes down the toilet, going on tubes. How did those meetings take place? Just the start of the meetings, and then did you have to use actors' names to kind of create interest, or did you use the film itself, or like a business plan, anything of that sort? How did those meetings start?
To be quite honest with you, there were no actors that So the audience knows too. When you're fundraising for a movie, you're either raising money for cast, or you're raising cast for money. Right. So you get some money, then you can trigger the cast for more money, or you happen to know a big actor that can trigger some money because of who they are. In our situation, it was raising money for cast, but it was such a lean and mean independent production that we didn't have the budget to cast, anybody with any quote unquote, theatrical or major television merit, which I think is part of the glory of the film. Because how many times have you seen that cool indie movie, and all of a sudden you can't get past the fact that that's Zac Efron you're watching?
Right.
You can't get past the fact that that's okay, cool, but that's Tom Hardy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas here you've got literally an ensemble of hardcore beast mode actors that are all up and coming, and because you're not trapped into who they are, you're able to ride into who they are on screen.
Mm-hmm.
To answer your question, this movie was put together with about 12, maybe 15 different investors.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, and the truth is by any means necessary, man,
Yeah.
It's and people invested in this film because they believed in us. They believed in the poison that I was putting on them. And yes, of course, you do the standard things as a producer. You have to build a pitch package. You have to build a prospectus. You have to do market research and show industry comparables.
Mm.
You have to be able to illustrate that your director has an assembly of work that is going to be, able to pull off the picture. You have to be able to prove as a producer that you have a body of work that illustrates that you can handle a feature film. So, people aren't just going to throw money at you because they want to. You've got to have some artillery behind you. But once you have that artillery behind you, it boils down to, do they believe in you? The vast majority of investors in independent film are lawyers, doctors, and real estate people, and dentists. These are people that are accredited investors that want to diversify a little bit, but they don't have the money to put down $500,000, but they could put down maybe $5-10 grand.
Sure.
And their lifestyles don't change. So, if you get $5-10 grand from 10, 15, 20, 30 different people, you got enough to make yourself a pretty cool independent film.
No, absolutely. And especially, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, especially when you're dealing with investors, it doesn't really, it does matter on the amount, but it's about they're not just investing in your product. In this case, it's your movie, but they're investing in the person, which is yourself. You're the writer and the producer. That's who they buy into. Yeah. They buy into the person that's behind the product. In this case, it's the movie. If they don't believe in you, they're not going to invest. So, I mean, if you had, as you mentioned, like 12 or 13 investors, that's actually kind of a lot of investors for an independent film. So that's definitely, a huge kudos to you and Ryan.
Oh, I mean, and that's what we're talking about, like, major investors. We're not talking about, the 400 people that gave us little bits of money on the Indiegogo campaign.
Right.
So from a project management standpoint, it's a fucking massive obstacle to have to deal with that many people. But look, in order to get to where few people are, you have to do what few people do.
Mm-hmm.
And that is independent filmmaking. And not just independent filmmaking, but producing a feature film that technically competes with the major players in the independent scene in the marketplace.
Absolutely, man.
And that's a challenge.
It is.
Budget. So I will answer the question like this. I did a line item budget for this film after we finished principal photography.
Okay.
And I took all soft services into consideration, in-kind services into consideration, basically stuff that people did for free or favors that we pulled, and then gave people basically what would be standard crew IATSE rates, union rates, put it all together, and the value of this movie is over $1.6 million. Now, that is not what was spent liquid on the film, but that is the value of the picture. And so now let me ask you, you've seen the movie. Mm-hmm. If someone came up to you and said, hey, that movie was shot for $1.5 million, would you believe it?
I could definitely believe it. I could definitely probably believe maybe even maybe a couple mil, the way it was shot.
Thank you. And because it looks like, and it is, the value of the movie is that much. But that boils back to, the kind of producers that we are, is making nothing look really, really good. And that comes with years and years of experience. I love what Robert Rodriguez said in Rebel Without a Crew. He said, you got 10 bad films in your system before you start making good films. So hurry up and start making bad films so you can get to your career.
No, it's a really good point, yeah. But no, I mean, I could definitely see it, being at least a couple mil of value, like you said. And we were talking about the other movies that weren't made for much money in the past, like The Wrestler and Pulp Fiction and so forth. And it's going once again, the cinematography, the look, the style, the acting. The movie was definitely taken very serious. When you wrote it, when Ryan directed, when you guys collaborated, you guys took it very serious. It wasn't, like you mentioned with silly short films or whatever that just don't come out right. It's not like that. It's a very good film. So yeah, I mean, you guys did a fantastic job on that. So yeah, well, David, we'll definitely wrap this up. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show on this. So once again, we want to just mention September 17, the movie will be available on iTunes for, on-demand iTunes, and then on other markets shortly after that, which is like Amazon, Google Play, and other markets and so forth. So David, at this point, now the movie is going to be released next month, as I just mentioned. We kind of dived into what your goals are a little bit with the movie and how it's going to be out there with them in the market and your future goals. But do you have other films that you're looking to produce and write and stuff like that, or are you looking to just work as a steady actor? What's your goals right now?
Sure. I mean, that's a question. Loaded.
It's a mouthful.
So, to tap on what you said, yes, we're going to be out September 17th. Right now, it's available on iTunes and Apple TV for pre-order. In other words, you can pre-order it now on Apple TV or iTunes. All Out Dysfunction, guys. If you go on there now and pre-order it, you're really going to be supporting us by helping us climb the iTunes ranking. The more pre-orders we get, then we stand the chance of being on the home iTunes movie page when we release September 17th. and it will be available for rental and for purchase on September 17th. And it will be on Dish Network, Cox, Verizon, Google Play, YouTube Red, Amazon Video, and also Xbox. So please support independent film so that we can make more movies. To answer your question, I've got another project right now. It's in development. It's pretty ready to go. Called Whispers in the Walls, which is a suspense thriller that ends in a bloodbath. Directed by Daniel J. Pico.
Okay.
Who wrote it with him. That is already sort of moving in the right direction. I'll leave it at that. I mean, it's still sort of gestating. As an actor, I'll be on the season finale of TNT's The Last Ship, which is September 11th. It's airing.
Okay.
As well as I'm on the cast of a new film called Destined, which world premiered at the Los Angeles Film Festival, and was just won top honors at the American Black Film Festival, and was produced by Sundance winner Tommy Oliver, who also produced the Screen Gems film A Perfect Guy, and that movie's with Phil Harper, Corey Hardick, Rob Riley, Lala Anthony. It's a great film. So, and on top of that, trying to balance being a producer and an actor. And it's incredibly difficult sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, David. I mean, it sounds like your plate is overly full. It's like you have a paper plate with a Thanksgiving dinner on top of it. So, I mean, you're you're definitely stacked.
Yeah. And it's leaking a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's actually falling apart, man. Actually, even if it was a glass plate, the turkey's actually cracking right through it, man. That's how busy you are right now. But I mean,
dude, and you know the deal, man. This shit is feast or famine.
Yeah,
there's a lot of guys and girls that wish they had my problems. So I'm really grateful, man. By the grace of God, I've been put in this position to continue what's going to be a legacy of great work. And I thank you for having me on and being so kind and generous with your time. And I hope everybody out there, look up All Out Dysfunction, spelled DYSFUNKTION. On the internet, you can see the trailer and, hashtag dysfunction, and check out the Facebook page. There's actually some unseen scenes. There's about 4 or 5 scenes that we've leaked from the movie. And, check out the making of it. It's all out there. It's all in the universe. Oh,
yeah, absolutely. And we'll definitely have links available. This show, in particular, goes on iTunes, as, I mentioned to you earlier, iTunes, SoundCloud. We just started a YouTube channel. So definitely YouTube always has those spots for links for, advertisements. So we'll definitely have that up for you. So people can just point and click and then enjoy, enjoy the film.
I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely.
That's going to be awesome.
Like I said, man, we're in the same boat. We're definitely in the same area. So all we can really do at the end of the day is help each other, and keep that gratitude, be thankful for it, man. And I think once again to you and Ryan and your entire cast and crew, kudos, congratulations on the film. Once again, September 17th, next month, it will be available on iTunes. And as you mentioned, you can pre-order the film now. If you like. So I definitely encourage you to do that. But David, thank you again for joining us on the show. Best of luck on the movie. Best of luck on your new film coming out. Congratulations on being on the television show, as you mentioned, and everything else, man. And Godspeed. And we'll definitely see you in the future.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much.
All right, brother. You take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Never Submit podcast. We appreciate your support and hope you enjoyed the show. We want to hear from you. Send your feedback, questions, and ideas to neversubmitpodcast@gmail.com. Please subscribe on iTunes. You'll never miss the show. Also, be sure to like our page on Facebook at facebook.com/neversubmit and visit our website at neversubmitent.com. Thanks again for listening to the Never Submit podcast.